Hi everyone. So in this video we will be dealing with the questions that were asked from postmodernism from December 2018 to December 2022. So we have also already dealt with a few questions that were asked from postmodernism. So we will continue the rest of the questions in this video. So we will be dealing with postmodernism. So I have already given an introduction to postmodernism. So postmodernism is actually a literary theory, a philosophical and cultural movement that emerged in the mid 20th century around the time of the Second World War. And one of the major characteristics that you can find of postmodern, which he calls as postmodern condition, is a skepticism towards the grand narratives, or skepticism towards absolute truths, the rejection of absolute truths, skepticism towards grand narratives, then a rejection of absolute truths and a focus on what we call as fragmentation and also the multiplicity of meaning. So that is what is postmodernism normally associated with. And if you look at postmodernism in depth, we can find that postmodern text, it often incorporates the different literary techniques like pastiche, parody, intertextuality, etc. They also play with multiple perspectives, then they disrupt the linear narratives, they blur the boundaries between the fiction and reality, and they also look at how a society is controlled by power and knowledge, and how the media, culture and other mass productions control the society. So these are the certain things that you can find when it comes to postmodernism as a literary theory. So now let's continue looking the questions that were asked from postmodernism. So here you can say that in December 2019 there was a question: who said the following? Discursive practices are not purely and simply modes of manufacture of discourse. They take shape in technical assembles, in institutions, in behavioral schemes, in types of transmission and dissemination, in pedagogical forms that both impose and maintain them. So the question is, who said the following? Discursive practices are not purely and simply modes of manufacture of discourse. They take shape in technical assembles, in institutions, in behavioral schemes, in types of transmission and dissemination, in pedagogical forms that both impose and maintain them. So the options are Roland Barthes, Michel Foucault, Homike Bhabha and Gayatri Spivak. So these are the four options. So again, this question is asked from Foucault. So we know about Foucault. So here we have given four options and the second option is Foucault. So Foucault, we know that he studied psychology, he studied medicine and criminology, and also in order to study their roles as bodies of knowledge that define the norms of behavior and deviance. So Foucault, he was fascinated by the mechanisms of prison surveillance, school discipline, systems for the administration and control of population, and the promotion of norms about bodily conduct including sex. So physical bodies, according to Foucault, physical bodies are subjugated and made to behave in certain ways as a microcosm of social control of the wider population through what he called as biopower. So according to him, biopower is something, a technique, a control technique that is used by the government in order to take control of human bodies, where this human body is considered just as a biological, or we can say a biological organism. Okay, it is not given an individuality, it is not given an uniqueness, it is just given a biological value. So disciplinary and biopower create a discursive practice, or we can say a body of knowledge and behavior that defines what is normal, acceptable and deviant. So these disciplinary practices and biopower, they create a discursive practice that defines what is normal, and if anyone moves away from what is normal, he or she is either punished or he or she is treated to be abnormal, and the government will take control over them. And this control can be seen as disciplinary, like prison surveillance or school disciplinary system. So it is a discursive practice that is nonetheless in constant flux. So again, if you look at the question, here a quote is given, and this quote it actually aligns with Michel Foucault's views on the discursive practices and power. So here you can find that Foucault, he argued that these discursive practices, they are not solely concerned with the production of the discourse, but are also shaped by various social, institutional and behavioral factors. So I think we have discussed the one question of postmodernism, where they say that it's not just imposing of power, but it is through normalization that this power takes the control, where we are manipulated or we are made into belief that these are the normal things, and deviating from these normalization would actually give them the power to control us or give them the power to punish us. So that is what he says. These discursive practices, they are not solely what can be concerned with the production of discourse, but they are also shaped and maintained by various social, institutional and behavioral factors. And we can say that Foucault, he emphasized that power operates through these institutions and discourses. Power operates through discourses, and that institutions, the technologies, social structures, they actually play a great role in shaping, not just shaping, but they also play a great role in perpetuating these discursive practices. So Foucault's work, it often explores the relationship between power and knowledge and the discourse in various social and historical contexts. So here, who said the following? Obviously the answer is option B, that is Michel Foucault. So the correct answer is option B, Michel Foucault. Now let's look at the next question. And this was a question that was asked in June 2020. A question that was asked in June 2020. Who among the following is known to have popularized the term glocalization? Who among the following is known to have popularized the term glocalization? So we have four options: Ronald Robertson, Francis Fukuyama, John Urey and John Tomlinson. Okay, Ronald Robertson, Francis Fukuyama, John Urey and John Tomlinson. So first let's look what this glocalization is. Okay, so glocalization, it is actually a combination of two words. We know one is globalization and the other one is localization. So glocalization is a combination of two words, globalization and localization. So the term is used to describe a product or service that is developed and distributed globally, but is also adjusted to accommodate the user or consumer in a local market. Okay, so the term is used to describe a product or service that is developed and distributed globally, but is also adjusted to accommodate the user or consumer in a local market. For a simple example, let's take the production of this sweater. So sweaters of many brands, it might be something that is developed and distributed globally, but the temperature adjustments, the ways in which it is adjusted to the user or consumer in a local market. Okay, for example, if you take the case of a dairy milk, the dairy milk is something that might be distributed globally, but the size, the rate all depends on different markets. The advertisements all depends on different markets. So that is what is called as globalization and localization. So globally encased or globally distributed product adjusted to a local market. That is what is called as glocalization. The term was coined in Harvard Business Review in 1980 by sociologist Ronald Robertson, who wrote that glocalization meant simultaneity, the co-presence of both universalizing and at the same time particularizing tendencies. So I think this image will give you more idea. So globalization means what? The global distribution of ideas and products. And localization means ideas, concepts and products that are made to satisfy the local needs of a customer or for the local customer needs. So when this globalization and localization combines, it creates glocalization, that is incorporating global concepts to local or regional needs. Okay, so that is the question. So here let's look at the options: Ronald Robertson, Francis Fukuyama, John Urey and John Tomlinson. So the correct answer is Ronald Robertson. So Ronald Robertson is the scholar who is primarily associated with popularizing, not coining, popularizing the term globalization, and he introduced the concept in his book Globalization, Social Theory and Global Culture, which was published in 1992. Globalization, Social Theory and Global Culture, published in 1992. So here you can find that Ronald Robertson, he coined the term to describe the interplay between the global and the local forces, emphasizing the ways in which global process and influences are adapted and localized in different contexts, in different cultural contexts. So glocalization, it recognizes that globalization is not a one-way process. Okay, it's not a one-way process, but it involves a reciprocal interaction and hybridization of this global and the local elements. So we can say that Ronald Robertson's, his work has been an influential in the study of globalization, the impact of globalization on a particular culture, economy and society. So the correct answer is option A, Ronald Robertson. Okay, the correct answer is option A, Ronald Robertson. So remember, Ronald Robertson, he is associated with popularizing the term glocalization, that is globalization plus localization. Now let's look at the next question, which was asked in December 2020, June 2021 cycles merged examination. Which of the following clusters is associated with what Julia Kristeva terms the semiotic? Which of the following clusters is associated with what Julia Kristeva terms the semiotic? So here we have authority, order and patriarchy, displacement, slippage and condensation, logic, reason and power, repression, control and normalcy. Authority, order and patriarchy, displacement, slippage and condensation, logic, reason and power, repression, control and normalcy. So in certain cases you can find that Julia Kristeva, she is actually a very important writer, but her certain concepts belongs to psychoanalysis while certain concepts belongs to postmodernism, as I said earlier, these things. And she has also said about feminism. So her concepts or her her theories, it actually falls under different categories. So here, since it's related to postmodernism, we put this question in postmodernism. So speaking about Julia Kristeva, so Julia Kristeva, she's a Bulgarian French philosopher, a literary critic, semiotist, psychoanalyst, feminist and a novelist. And Kristeva's most important contribution to the philosophy of language was her distinction between the semiotic and the symbolic aspects of language. The distinction between the symbolic and the semiotic aspects of language. So the semiotic, which is manifested in rhythm and tone, is associated with the maternal body, which she also calls as Cora, and the symbolic, on the other hand, corresponds to grammar and syntax, that is associated with the referential meaning. So there are two aspects of language, the semiotic aspect and the symbolic aspect. The semiotic aspect, which is manifested in rhythm and tone, it is associated with the maternal body, and the symbolic is associated with grammar and syntax, which is associated with the referential meaning. With this distinction, Kristeva attempted to bring the speaking body back into linguistics and philosophy. So she proposed that bodily drives are discharged in language and the structure of language is already operating in the system. So that's what she says about Julia Kristeva. So let's look at the question. Which of the following clusters is associated with what Julia Kristeva terms the semiotic? So there are two aspects of language, semiotic and symbolic. So here the correct answer is option B. That is, the cluster is displacement, slippage and condensation. Displacement, slippage and condensation. So Julia Kristeva, she uses the term semiotic to refer to a pre-linguistic and non-verbal realm of experience. A pre-linguistic and non-verbal realm of experience that is associated with this bodily drives about emotions, the disruptive poetic aspects of a language. So it is characterized by the fluid and these rhythmic qualities of signification. So displacement, slippage and condensation, these are concepts commonly associated with the semiotic realm. Okay, these are closely associated with the semiotic realm. So these concepts, that is displacement, slippage and condensation, these concepts, they describe the non-linear, they describe the unpredictable nature of meaning making. Okay, where the signifiers can shift, the signifiers can blend, they can condense. That is what is called displacement, slippage and condensation. They can shift, they can blend, they can condense in various ways that challenge the traditional, normal and linguistic norms. So you can say that the semiotic disrupts and resists the dominant symbolic and the linguistic order. So here, which of the following clusters is associated with what Julia Kristeva terms the semiotic? The correct answer is displacement, slippage and condensation. Displacement, slippage and condensation. So the correct answer is option B. Now moving to the next question. This was again a question that was asked in the merge cycle, that is December 2020 to December 2020 and June 2021 cycles merged examination. Who among the following is said to have believed that the Persian Gulf War never happened? Who among the following is said to have believed that the Persian Gulf War never happened? So we have Jacques Derrida, Baudrillard, Jürgen Habermas and Sigmund Bauman. So these are the 4 options. This is also a very direct question. And the correct answer is Baudrillard, because the Gulf War did not take place. It is actually a collection of 3 short essays written by the postmodern theorist, that is John Baudrillard. And the 3 essays are: the Gulf War will not take place, the Gulf War is not really taking place, and the Gulf War did not take place. So it's a collection of 3 short essays written by Baudrillard. So here, the contrary to the title, that the Gulf War did not take place, the author believes that the events and also the violence of the Gulf War, it actually took place, where the issue is that of the interpretation. So Baudrillard is not saying that the Gulf War never ever happened. He says that the representation, he finds the fault in the representation of the Gulf War. So this was actually the time where what happens in the Gulf War is known to the people through media, through radio and other media. So he says the issue is one of the interpretations of this Gulf War, were the events that took place comparable to how they were presented, the relationship between how things really happened and how these things were really presented. And he even says that whether these things can even be called as a war, whether what happens in Gulf can be called as a war. So the title, that is the Gulf War did not take place, it's actually a reference to the play that is the Trojan War will not take place. Okay, it's actually a reference to this play, the Trojan War will not take place. So here you can find that Baudrillard, he argues that the Gulf War was not really a war, not that it never happened, it was not really a war, but it was an atrocity. Okay, it was an atrocity which was massacred as a war, which was shown, which was portrayed as a war. So using overwhelming air power, the American military, for most part, they did not directly engage in a combat with the Iraqi army, and they suffered few casualties. Almost nothing was made known about the Iraqi death. So the Gulf War is known to the public, or the Gulf War is known to the non-Arabic or the outside American people through the media or through the news given by the America. So nothing is known about the Iraqi death. So the fighting did not really take place. That is what Baudrillard says. The fighting or the war did not take place from the point of view of the West. Moreover, all that the spectators go to know about the war is in the form of a propaganda, imaginary, and the closely watched media presentations made it impossible to distinguish between the experience of what truly happened in the conflict and its simulacra. Okay, so that is what Baudrillard tries to say. So who among the following is said to have believed that the Persian Gulf War never happened? The correct answer is John Baudrillard, because Baudrillard, the French sociologist, a philosopher, he is known for his controversial views and provocative views on the nature of reality, on the nature of media, the manipulation of media, and for his ideas of simulation and simulacra. So he argued that the Persian Gulf War, it did not truly happen, but it was really a hyper-real that was created by the media. It was not just created by the media, but it was also mediated by the media and the spectacles of the war. So that is what Baudrillard tries to claim. So Baudrillard, he claims that the war was not a reality, but it was a simulation, where the distinction between the reality and the representation had collapsed. So according to him, the media's hyperbolic coverage of this war and the proliferation of the images and the narratives, which are extremely detached from this concrete reality, created an illusion of war. Okay, created an illusion of war that was divorced from actual military operations and their consequences. So Baudrillard's views on the Gulf War and simulation have been widely debated and criticized here. So here the correct answer is option B, that is John Baudrillard. So these are the next 4 questions that were asked from postmodernism, and there were other questions that were asked from postmodernism, and we will discuss that in the upcoming videos. Thank you.